should start talking because you guys all got quiet. This is really great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is Jeff Thies. I'm the director of the Institute. Good evening, everyone. Is that better? Yes. Thank you. So my name is Jeff Thies. I'm clinical associate professor of management here and also a director of the Institute for Business Ethics and Sustainability. A couple of years ago, in partnership with Global Local Affairs, we launched the SDG Student Ambassador Program. The College of Business Administration is a signatory to the Principles for Responsible Management Education, which is a United Nations initiative really focusing on how business education will advance an understanding of the business application and the importance of engaging really the important needs embodied in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The Institute for Business Ethics and Sustainability does a number of programs and initiatives throughout the year to advance this work along with every other program and initiative that takes place in the College of Business. Every year, we submit a report to the United Nations detailing our work as the College of Business Administration, which is one of our responsibilities as signatories to the Principles for Responsible Management Education. One of the things that we really wanted to do when we launched this program was to foster two things. The first is student-led initiatives so that we would stand up SDG student ambassadors who would work to both catalyze an understanding of the SDGs and really help us see how these are engaged within the life and the different kinds of initiatives that we have throughout Loyola Marymount University. So I'm really proud to have our SDG ambassadors do this showcase event tonight, in which they will share with you the work that they have done and how that work is an expression of the Sustainable Development Goals that they've identified and that they have worked to impact. So what I'll do is ask them I'll just introduce them briefly, and then we're going to start with Soliana and with Aiden, and then we'll have Kevin and Mariah, and then I'm sure I butchered your name, I apologize, and then we'll finish with Anya's and a panel discussion, okay? So two presentations, a panel discussion, and then reception in the lobby, okay? So if I could begin by asking Aiden and Soliana to please come forward.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. Yes. Awesome. I'm Aiden Brown. I've been an SDG ambassador for about 3 years now.
And I'm Soliana, and I've been an SDG ambassador for this whole school year.
Awesome. And so our project this year was focused on launching an RSO called the Global Human Rights Club that was centered on SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions.
So we're gonna just start off by talking about what was the purpose of starting this RSO. So when Aiden and I were meeting about what we wanted to do this school year, we decided on creating an RSO. So we really wanted to talk about peace and justice and strong institutions. And when we went through our Leo page, we realized that we don't really have a Global Human Rights Club on campus. So we decided to create one to be able to foster discussions that would push forward SDG goals. So the purpose of our club was to be created to talk about human rights violations happening globally. And we would kind of have a meeting every week, and we would sit with students and discuss these human rights violations and do education on our own. And then we would host events or host social media infographics to kind of explain to students what these are. And we would always relate each one of these human rights violations to an SDG goal, because there is a pattern of one human rights violation would relate to one SDG goal as a solution. So we wanted to kind of create this club to be able to foster those kinds of discussions.
Yes, and so with that, Soliana mentioned that we are also promoting the SDGs while we are talking about each of these human rights violations. So in that, we decided to choose some specific SDGs when we were studying certain countries. So we picked 2 countries this semester, Sudan and China. And in that, we decided to focus on SDGs 2 and SDGs 8, 11, and 8, 12, and 13. So as you can see on the next slide, it'll show you all of the SDGs that we kind of looked at. And so in part of our education, we decided to post on social media about what are the SDGs. We had a discussion about what the Sustainable Development Goals looked like, especially in terms of the human rights violations that were happening in Sudan and in China. And so as an ambassador, we really focused on showing the students how can we envision solutions to these human rights violations in a perspective of the Sustainable Development Goals.
And then this slide is kind of our e-board for this school year. So we kind of got students from a bunch, like pretty much from the poli-sci department. And so Aiden and I were the president and vice president of the RSO. And then we had Rebecca Press, who was our treasurer, and then Jordan Carell, who was our events coordinator. And then we had Alexis Segovia, who was our communications. And as an e-board, we kind of we had these positions, but we kind of talked to each other about like what each position meant and how we were gonna be able to maintain our club throughout the whole school year, because obviously as a new RSO, a lot of our club meetings was like a lot of us as e-boards, and as the school year developed, we had more and more students join.
Yeah, and we just wanna give a little shout out to our faculty advisor. Well, her name is Kirsten Fisk. She is a professor in the political science department, and she was really just a great help in just helping us envision what this RSO would look like and helping us get it started as well. So our work this semester was really focused on one country at a time. So like I said, we focused on 2 so far. So we focused on Sudan first, in which we had one meeting where we talked about what was going on in Sudan in terms of the civil war and the conflict that was happening there, and what kind of effects were on civilians in terms of civilian attacks, in terms of the famine and food crisis as well. And so in that, our idea looking forward is to focus on one country, hopefully at least each month, to learn about what human rights violations that they're facing and really examine them through a specific SDG. And so in that, like I said, we were hosting educational awareness initiatives. So through either tabling at Wellness Wednesday to educate the student body, hosting our meetings as well, and collaborating with other student organizations like Net Impact and like our Arab Student Association on campus as well, just to get a broader scope of and a lot more perspective on these human rights violations and how it's affecting the world around us.
And when we decided on which type of countries we would focus on, like obviously like internationally, there's a lot of countries facing a lot of various different human rights violations. So we kind of chose to focus on certain countries that you don't really see media give attention towards, because as we said, our main message was to push forth these SDG goals and push forth like highlighting certain countries. So when we chose Sudan and China, we wanted to host those countries specifically because we know that we've seen on news medias or organizations abroad that these countries aren't really highlighted. So our main focus of our RSO is to constantly choose countries that are really underrepresented.
And so, yes, these are just what we did in March. We held a Pizza and Politics event for the conflict in Sudan, in which we had Professors Sharif, Professor Rebecca Wall, and Professor Fisk talk about their research on the Sudan crisis and the conflict there, and hold a panel discussion about it in a question and answer kind of discussion with students about, you know, what does this kind of look like, what is going on there, and how can we address solutions. And so in April, so tomorrow actually, we will have an event as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later
So this slide is kind of just a reflection of our first event, which was the Pizza and Politics for Sudan. So we hosted it at the Political Science Village, and we had about 40-ish students come to this event. And as Aiden has already said, it was a panelist discussion. So each of these professors had their own specialties regarding politics. So we had Professor Wall kind of give us a historical analysis of like what has been happening in Sudan and how this civil war had started, because we wanted to give everyone kind of a background information. And then we had Professor Sharif really discuss the famine. That was one of our main goals of the Sudan event, is we wanted to push forth goal 2, which was zero hunger. And so we wanted to talk about the famine in Sudan and how and what needs to happen to be able to aid that famine. And then we had Professor Fisk kind of talk about the sexual and refugee crisis that's happening in Sudan. So we had about 3 different aspects of what was happening in Sudan discussed at this event.
And so also in talking about that, we talked about what the SDG 2 Zero Hunger would look like in terms of solutions. And so in that, we kind of realized that the international aid that was happening towards helping Sudan fix the food crisis wasn't really helping in terms of just getting the food and getting the aid into these areas, because there's a lot of this violence is ethnically motivated, and so you have problems of a lot of Sudanese populations. People are not being able to access this food because government entities are opposing that kind of or blocking them from accessing that aid. And so in terms of focusing on solutions, it's really about really getting these domestic governments and these international aid associations to really focus on how can we better get these populations to access this food and to really fix this hunger crisis.
And kind of adding on that, we also wanted to relate it heavily to SDG Goal 2, because when people talk about Sudan, often people don't really talk about the famine situation. Instead, they talk about the refugee crisis and the amount of Sudanese refugees that are displaced right now, which is also as important. But the focus of our event was really to tell students that like there are these SDGs, right? There's 17 of them, and a lot of them are there to serve to help these countries. And as part of our RSO, we wanted to really align it with human rights violations and show people that there are solutions to these human rights violations. There are SDG goals that really help these countries out, and it's really up to the international community and the governments to really push forward these initiatives.
And so looking forward to our next event, we will have an event tomorrow in the Political Science Village focusing on sustainability in China. And so really with that event, we wanted to highlight what sustainability initiatives are happening in China, because a lot of the times in the media we'll see that China is usually the entity that is causing a lot of pollution and a lot of environmental damage. But we also want to highlight what sustainability initiatives that they have taken on and how we can kind of envision these in the SDGs, such as renewable energy, climate action, and things like that. So tomorrow, if you guys do have time, we would love to see you guys there. It's from 12 to 1 p.m. and we have done a lot of research and worked really hard on this, so we would love to see you guys out there.
We'll also be having food, so that is also like an imperative to come. And there will be a question and answer. And if you aren't able to come, if you follow our Instagram, we actually post a recap of all of our events. So for our Sudan event, we had a lot of research that we did, and we posted a couple of infographics. So if you want to check that out, our Instagram is LMU Global Human Rights. And for China as well, we'll be posting another recap of our events. So we want to make sure everyone is able to get the education. So if you want to look at our Instagram, you can. If you want to join our RSO as well, you just have to go on Leo and click attend, or you can DM us. And we meet every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. in St. Rob's.
All right, well, thank you guys so much.
Wonderful, Soliana and Aiden. Thank you so much for all of the work that you've done, the attention that you brought to the Sustainable Development Goals that you were targeting. The Sustainable Development Goals represent 17 dimensions of profound human need. I like how one person has characterized them in summary, which is fundamentally the aim is that no person be left behind. But engaging the details of the need in each of those dimensions, really understanding the human face and the issue fundamentally of rights is such an important thing that you emphasized, and we really profoundly appreciate that. I want to share with our business students that you can earn CBA Advantage points with this presentation tonight, and you'll have the opportunity to scan the QR code for that after the presentation when we're visiting with each other in the lobby. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Surya and Kevin, who are going to focus on their important work, which really demonstrate some other of the Sustainable Development Goals that you find that they're interested in.
Hello guys, my name is Kevin. I'm a junior here. It's my first year doing this, and
hi guys, I'm Surya Madinori. I'm a freshman and I just joined as an SDG Ambassador last semester.
thank you guys first and foremost for joining us here, for listening, for staying. Today we're going to be talking about SDG 14, Life Below Water, and our project in relation to that. So first of all, we chose this one not because it's the most important, all the SDGs are important, but to us, we felt like this was easily overlooked. And this is mostly because of the fact that we use a lot of plastic in our lives, we use a lot of disposable things, single-use stuff, and there was a study conducted by the WWF, and this is about an estimate just for a visual, it's not literal, but we're consuming about like a credit card's worth of plastic in a week. Take with that what you will, and it's not just that we're consuming it, it goes to our oceans, it gets into our marine life, it gets into the water that we drink, and all of this is important and we feel like it is easily overlooked. And again, there's marine life, and this cycle just really ruins the circle of life that those marine life animals go through.
So focusing on our project, we thought of doing a petition, essentially in order to promote the SD goal 14, Life Below Water. We chose to advocate by creating an easily accessible website that can guide readers to 3 different ongoing petitions that are local to Los Angeles. And our main focus was plastic accumulating in our oceans, and secondly, the waste contamination that acts as a ripple effect through the plastic, and also the LA wildfires, which I'll get to. So the website essentially connects users directly to 3 ongoing petitions, and these petitions focus on marine pollution and water contamination. Essentially, it just takes a minute to fill out the petition, in the sense you give your first name, last name, your email address, and your phone number. So it takes only a minute, but the culmination of all of these petitions act as like a community of voice that can put pressure on the legislations to put together an environmental policy. So to sum it down, more signatures result in more visibility, and more visibility is a stronger foundation for implementing an environmental change. So that's why we focused on creating a petition through our website.
First and foremost, before we get into the plan, it wasn't easy to get here. We had another idea to begin with, and needless to say, there was a lot of roadblocks that we had to get there, so we ended up pivoting to this website petition idea, and so this is ultimately the plan that we just took everything that we had as a foundation and moved it into building the website and finding these petitions and using the organizations we had already found, come in contact to, and really just put it together into this plan. So the goal was to build a petition website and focus it on that sustainable development goal. Just focus on a couple petitions, not make it too overwhelming, and bring traffic to this website to sign petitions that we found and we researched to be strong and either local or an international level, because ultimately the Sustainable Development Goals are an international program, and ultimately encourage civic action for that marine life.
So initially we thought of focusing our petitions on ongoing issues related to plastic contamination. However, in January we just experienced like the catastrophic LA wildfires. Around 55,000 acres of land were burned in the season alone. So we pivoted to focusing on wildfires. Essentially, wildfires release a lot of toxic debris. In the sense, this toxic debris contains a lot of fire ash, and that consists of copper, lead, and dioxins. So all of these run off into sewage, and that slippage will ultimately end up in the marine ecosystem. So that affects sea lions and dolphins, because those toxic algae blooms will result in a nutrient switch off into the marine ecosystems, and these ultimately affect and like the sea lions and dolphins sick. So that's what I had in the next slide about. A study done by the Marine Mammal Care Center talks about how hundreds of sea lions and dolphins were stranded along the coastlines of Santa Monica and Venice Beach. This is all because of the toxic algae blooms that were present with dominant acids, which are really harmful to the respiratory systems of these sea lions and dolphins. So these pictures demonstrate how they were like washed up to the shore, and yeah, there was also a protest that happened in Santa Monica a while ago, which focused on fire debris and how it's not a silent killer, as it not only affects the respiratory cycle of humans, it also affects the marine animals when it sweeps into the ocean ecosystems.
So again, we had the idea of the petitions, big scale, international, and local level, but due to the fire, we thought it was a bigger issue to tackle this, especially because just because the fire is over doesn't mean we're clear to inhabit the land and go about life as usual, especially in the Malibu Topanga area, because it's it's on the coast, and it affects the marine life, it affects the air, it affects our water, and the petitions, as you'll see, really highlight that fact, and the fact that the water is untested, the soils hasn't been tested, and the petitions are to get counsel for those testings, and Surya will mention that eventually, and just to bring more awareness to the fact that a lot of people aren't aware of that, a lot of people are still surfing in that water, a lot of people are still visiting. The Malibu mayor has declared the PCH to be reopened in May, which is just an estimated date, but even so, we think it's too early to be thinking about all that before testing the soil as thoroughly as we should, which the petitions will go over.
So essentially, as we pivoted to wildfires, we focused on 3 ongoing petitions. First being the Protect Our Coastline, demanding immediate action towards toxic debris. This was from Change.org. So essentially, this petition focuses on removing fire ash. As I said, it has lead, copper, and dioxins. And it also focuses on opposing the idea of situating hazardous sites right next to the Santa Monica or the Venice Beach. So essentially, as you situate a hazardous site, such as a waste sorting or a fire zone, you keep all the debris near that zone, so there's a more exposure for the debris to sweep into the marine ecosystem. So that ultimately will lead to dominic acids, as I said before, and it will result in illness between animals such as fish, sea lions, etc. And it also talks about pushing and implementing more soil and water testing, and also just implementing more data transparency, as environmentalists would want to know on how the legislation is going on about doing the cleanup, or like just how the contamination has been spreading and things, etc. The second one is rather specific to Topanga Creek. This is also from Change.org, and this petition talks about opposing the idea of situating a toxic sorting site near Topanga Creek. This place is home to endangered species such as trout, and also it's a vital watershed region. So situating toxic waste sorting site over here would affect the waterways, and it will also endanger the already endangered species. It also highlights the risk to evacuation sites, because near the Topanga Creek there's an evacuation site, and building this site would only increase the effect of not having an evacuation site. And it also, this is a bit off the topic, but it also talks about the land being indigenous to the tribes that are specific to Topanga Creek. So that was petition 2. And petition 3 is specific to plastics. This is from plasticoceans.org, and it's about the California legislative bill which was passed a few years ago. It's the Circular Economy Bill, and this bill essentially talks about their mission to reduce 75% of plastic, single-use plastic by year 2030. Essentially, they want to reduce this by only focusing on promoting compostable and recyclable materials. And these materials, they would want to promote it by businesses to give it to consumers. So it's a B2B and a B2C approach. It also talks about pushing for more local green manufacturing, in the sense they promote the aspect of creating materials with bamboo, wood, paper, and fibers or textile materials rather than plastic, as plastic take a longer time to get recycled. And yeah, that was petition 2.
So here are some screenshots of the website. The website's called healourwaters.com, and it's basically just streamlined to get you to these petitions. It also highlights the fact that this is a Sustainable Development Ambassador program, and that's important because of the fact that we are emphasizing local petitions right now, but it is also a bigger picture scale, because we want to focus on this now, but eventually we are going to pivot to different types of petitions. And right now we're currently highlighting these numbers that are in relevance to the wildfires and these petitions. And if you wanted to look it up and sign a petition, that'd be great. And we also, after this, you're going to see these on campus to drive traffic to the website. And that's all we have prepared for you guys today. Thank you for listening.
Our Dean Gail Smith is able to come in for just a couple of minutes, and we so thank her for her support and leadership in engaging sustainable development.
Thanks, Jeff. I was going to sort of slip in and slip out, and you made that nearly impossible. I was triple booked tonight. So.
Oh, sorry.
But I did want to hear, and thank you for the work that you do, because this is also important to all of us, and particularly in a week where we're grieving the the loss of Pope Francis and all that he wrote in the Laudato Si, and then 10 years later saying we haven't done enough, really indicates just how powerfully important this work is, particularly for those of us affiliated with the Jesuit institution, that we can do more, we must do more, we're being called to do more. So thank you all for inspiring us. And as I sat in an Ignatian pedagogy workshop this morning, one of the things we were talking about is where inspiration comes from. And just speaking for myself as a dean, my inspiration comes so much from what our students bring to the environment, to the ecosystem. So I just want to thank you all for your commitment to the SDGs, for all that you're doing. And I get to share what you all are doing when I go to New York for the Prime Conference in June. So anyway, thanks, Jeff. Now I will slip out quietly.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to have our third portion of the evening here in just a second, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. Notice the themes. The first in Aiden and Soliana, recognition, engagement, acknowledgement, both of the importance of human rights and then the human stories of the challenges and violations of those rights. Then Surya and Kevin really speak to the importance of advocacy, to giving voice, not just their own voice as SDG ambassadors, but enabling each of us through these petitions to use our voice to advance this work. Advocacy is so important. And I want to also recognize two words that they used. One was this issue of pivot. We really try to emphasize the importance of agility. We live in a world where things change dramatically. You were going in one direction, the LA fires. How could you not engage that pivot, agility? Such an important dimension of leadership, because part of this program is that these student leaders develop and strengthen their leadership skills in the work that they do. And then I also want to acknowledge the word roadblock, because when I'm working with them and they're working through plans and ideas and wouldn't this be great, and then you need to talk to this person and then let's see if we can get this to happen, and maybe that things take time. It's hard to maneuver things in complex organizations. Some of the required agility comes from the fact that there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things connect with other things. And that project management dimension of this and the real life experience of navigating those different dimensions and having agility to pivot when a roadblock impedes, from my standpoint, that's all good because it's part of the process. So now I'd like to introduce Anya, and she's going to introduce the panel discussion that she's facilitating for us tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Anya Moran, and I'm a sophomore studying psychology and political science. And this is my first year as a Sustainable Development Ambassador, and the goal I'm focusing on is quality education. So before I start my panel and introduce our guests, I'm going to briefly explain what quality education means, and then I'm going to give an overview of the structure and the goal of this discussion. So to start off, quality education is SDG number 4, and it's about ensuring inclusive and equitable lifelong education. So more than just getting children into classrooms, this is about children of all ages being supported and learners of all ages being supported, and making sure marginalized groups are being accounted for. So this goal specifically targets access, equity, and lifelong learning. It focuses on literacy, numeracy, and 21st century skills, and it ultimately emphasizes education as a tool for social mobility and empowerment. It's a basic human right and also an essential tool for breaking the cycle of inequality. Increased education means increased chances of finding decent work, staying healthy, being active in communities, and working towards a better future. So that being said, for this panel discussion, There are going to be 3 different sections where each panelist will highlight how their role at LMU advances quality education. So we're going to start by explaining how educational disparities and the diverse needs of students need to be addressed. And then we'll discuss the importance of each panelist's respective initiatives that reflect the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we'll conclude by talking about the role of LMU students in supporting accessible quality education. So I'm very excited to introduce our panelists, Jose Rincon, Carla Cortez, and Antonio Gareca, who exemplify quality education initiatives at our university. So on my far left, Jose Rincon is the Reference and Instruction Librarian for Business, where he serves as the liaison to the College of Business Administration. Holding an MLS and an MBA, his work spans business research, reference services, collection development, instruction, and one-on-one research consultations. An active member of professional organizations, including the American Library Association, the Association of College and Research Libraries, and the Business References and Services section, Jose regularly contributes to the field through presentations and scholarship. His current research interests include the role of emerging AI technologies in education, and he was awarded a European Union grant to conduct research on green behavior at AGH University of Science and Technology in Krakow, Poland. Jose is passionate about the transformative power of education and is dedicated to supporting students, faculty, and staff in achieving their academic, professional, and personal goals. Thank you for being here, Jose. And then in the middle here, Carla Cortez is the director of LMU Extension and has dedicated her career to helping individuals from underrepresented groups gain access to education and employment opportunities. Carla has extensive expertise in leveraging labor market insight with community resources to deliver skill-based training programs to job seekers, including low-income adults, foster youth, and individuals with disabilities. As a first-generation college graduate herself, Carla believes in the transformative power of education and is devoted to LMU's mission and has a long-standing commitment to community service. Happy to have you, Carla. And Antonio Gareca is a third-year graduate student in the LMU School of Education in pursuit of an MA in School Counseling, PPS, and CWA track accordingly. His current role as the LMU Counseling Graduate Student Association President allows for him to work on collaborations with up-and-coming counselors in professional development, academics, and servant leadership. He currently serves as a counseling assistant at Maywood Center for Enriched Studies at LAUSD and hopes to continue in the college and career counseling field within the Los Angeles Unified School District. Thank you, Antonio. So to start off this conversation, I would like to begin with understanding disparities. My first question is to you, Jose. One of the main frameworks of the SDGs is this universal blueprint for sustainable development, or a global partnership. So while the goals emphasize quality education globally, this initiative often begins locally. Given your experience with innovative teaching methods and international models of academics, how do you think a global perspective can help LMU students better understand educational disparities in the local LA community?
Thank you. That's a really thoughtful question, and one that speaks to the heart of how we bridge global awareness and local responsibility. As a reference and instruction librarian for business, I often see how global frameworks like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 4 on quality education, can serve as a powerful lenses for students to examine inequalities, not just abroad, but right here in Los Angeles. When students explore how education is accessible in low-income communities, or how innovative models are used to address inequality, they often come to an important realization. Similar systemic barriers shaped by policy, economics, and history exist in their communities too. In my instruction sessions, particularly with first-year students in Rhetorical Arts 1000, we explore the Jesuit tradition of eloquentia perfecta, the ideal of the good person of writing and speaking well for the common good. I introduce students to an empirical article titled Prevalence and Correlates of Food Insecurity Among U.S. College Students, and we break it down together. This becomes a powerful teaching moment, not just to understand how to navigate academic literature, but also to explore a real and pressing social justice issue. Students are often surprised to learn that food insecurity affects college campuses, including ours. We discuss how LMU's campus food pantry supports students, faculty, and also staff, reinforcing that these inaccuracies, these issues are local, urgent, and relevant. Research in this way becomes a path to both understanding and action. What's powerful is that students begin to see education as more than a classroom experience. It's deeply tied to housing, healthcare, employment, and systemic opportunity. When we bring global perspectives into the LMU classrooms, we're supporting our mission to educate the whole person. Students develop sharper critical thinking skills, deeper empathy, and a growing sense that social impact is not just charity, it's leadership, innovation, and collaborative problem solving.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this global perspective really emphasizes how diversity of quality education is more than a classroom experience, like you mentioned. So I think understanding this diversity means recognizing the value of non-traditional students. So my next question is for you, Carla. One main target I'm focused on under quality education is increasing the number of youth and adults with relevant skills for financial success. So LMU Extension offer these opportunities, especially for adult learners. And when we talk about non-traditional students, what does that mean in the context of this program? And how do you ensure that these students gain skills for sustainable success?
Yes, LMU is committed to increasing educational impact, LMU Extension, increasing educational impact for adult learners and, yes, the non-traditional student. And that includes students from disadvantaged and underserved, underrepresented communities, such as the ones we described earlier on, these low-income adults, former foster youth, veterans, formerly incarcerated individuals, and individuals with disabilities as well. And our programs are non-degree path, right? And providing employment preparation programs. Simply stated, that is how we describe our work, right? While we do provide professional development courses and certificate programs, a big part of the work we do for underserved communities is providing employment preparation programs through certificate programs that are responsive to the regional labor market. This is how we work very closely with our local workforce boards, with the Employment Development Department to ensure that our programs are aligned with labor demand, right? So that is how we ensure their success. So we ensure that by ensuring that our certificate programs will lead to employment. That's one part. The second part is through ensuring that our students from these groups have adequate support. And by what that means is that wraparound support. Things like childcare, access to mental health supports, transportation assistance, clothing for interview preparation, assistance with books, all the things that might prevent someone from completing a program. So I'd say those are the two key components of our programs. One, ensuring that our programs will lead to jobs. And second, ensuring that our students from underserved and underrepresented groups have the wraparound support.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a powerful reminder of how important it is to create accessible pathways, like you mentioned, for the labor market and then also for mental health support. So building on that idea of inclusivity, my next question is for you, Antonio. As the president of the Graduate Counseling Students Association, you have a unique perspective on these support systems needed for students to succeed. So how does your leadership role inform your understanding of the diverse needs of students, such as those from non-traditional backgrounds?
Thank you. Appreciate the question. So yeah, I think I want to start off by saying that we're up and coming professionals. We're not out there in the field just yet in school counseling. However, CGSA does provide a perfect platform for us to really explore why it is that we're doing our role, right? Especially in a time in 2025 where we're getting hit left and right when it comes to crisis and trauma. It's actually one of our cornerstones in our curriculum. How can we go ahead and provide a platform for our students to really comprehend what it means to be a counselor and provide mental health services for the people that are out there, right? I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have had contact with a counselor to get here at LMU. And with that being said, pathways in education are just so vast as far as what we consider to be successful, right? If you go to a 4-year pathway like LMU, does that consider you a successful student? Does that make someone who goes to a community college not successful? And on top of that, we have to humanize that experience, right? Because what are the lived conditions that these students are going through in order to get to higher academia? So all that in mind, that's what CGSA tries to tackle, is how can we go ahead and have our counselors understand what our kids going through. And there have been a bunch of programs in CGSA that we've done already. As we've learned, the wildfires in January 2025 were very tragic. How do you expect a kid in Palisades, how do you expect a kid in Topanga to show up to school and perform with straight A's when they're worried about not having a home? That's just, again, humanizing that lived experience. How can we expect a kid to perform? So we wanted our counselors to fully understand that experience, and we went out with the girls, Altadena Girls Fire Recovery Program, and helped them out with the time, and it really contextualized what it means to support a teenage girl that just went through this experience. And we also had a graduate and alumni leaders in education conference where we talked about this idea of resiliency, right? In a time where things feel very bleak and hopeless and we don't have control over what's happening in the world, we do have agency over ourselves in the spaces that we create and cater. And one of the topics was this idea of mentorship and student resilience, and have the students go out there and create clubs and initiatives of their own. So I think it's very serendipitous and full circle that we're having this conversation here, that there is a platform, there is agency, there is ways that we can go ahead and create change, because the kids have that wisdom, they have that inner genius, and if they're already experiencing that, we as adults have to give them the platform to go forth and make that change.
Definitely, yeah. I think that insight into that emotional and academic support really highlights how layered and personal education can be. And I really liked how you mentioned humanizing the experience. I think this is a good transition point to dive deeper into how LMU initiatives bring this value and belonging to non-traditional leaders. So circling back to Carla and your work for LMU Extension, this program offers non-traditional students the LMU experience. So what does that mean in practice or in the context of lifelong learning? And why do you think it's important that someone attending a one-day workshop or a prep course receives the same caliber of education as a degree-seeking student?
Well, this is based on LMU Spotlight initiatives, right? Access LMU. Our goal at LMU Extension is to ensure that someone who may not otherwise have access to LMU can access what we all know and love, right? As either faculty, staff, or proud alums, that we lived that experience. And so when we're able to give someone who may have just gotten out of prison or who is coming home from the military, when we are able to give them a glimpse of not just LMU and this beautiful place we call home, but also the academic experience, right? And the social justice values that we are all connected to, that's impactful. And that's when we see change, right? But again, it goes back to ensuring that our programs are responsive to the local labor needs, ensuring that our programs are also relevant, primarily in periods of economic downturn, right? Who are our students? Are they older adults, perhaps displaced by mass layoffs, or folks that maybe lost their jobs because as a result of the wildfires? How do we provide, what type of support do we provide, for someone who is maybe considering a new occupation? So understanding the region and its challenges is key to what we do.
Yeah. I think building on that idea of access and inclusion and responsiveness of the programs, as you mentioned, is really important. And one of the key targets of quality education is ensuring equal access to affordable, quality higher education, especially for underrepresented groups like first-generation college students. So my next question is for you, Antonio. This access to college often relies on navigating complex systems like financial aid or grants. So given your experience in LMU's counseling program, how can counseling or policy students reframe that language and those tools so that they can empower first-generation students?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the wording of the question as far as reframing the language. I'm, of course, first generation myself. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I went to a Title I school in Southeast LA, and being third in my class, going into undergraduate studies at a school up the 405, I don't know if I can say it for live streaming purposes. But I went there, and I am very grateful that I went for that education. But that transition from being the bright kid from a small high school to a big public institution like that, ranked nationally, that transition and going from the imposter syndrome and that wave of I'm not good enough and all that comes with that transition from high school to college, it really made me think about what we define as success. And for so long, the narrative in our schools is you have to go a 4-year in order to be successful. And I think when it comes to working with first generation students, how we go ahead and define success really, really matters, right? At this point in time, long are the days of going into college and getting into a career. We know that there are alternate pathways for you to go ahead and create a career for yourself. We know that there are trades, we know that there are community colleges, adult extension schools, there are certificate programs, there are apprenticeships, there's so much out there that we can really equip our first-gen students to really fully understand what it means to be successful. And because ultimately we want to make sure that they have a good livelihood, right? We want to make sure that you have a career for yourselves. So as a counselor, how far are you willing to go out to inform yourself about these pathways, right? And even for ourselves, like, even my story, I only thought that 4-year was it. I had to go shoot for those top-notch schools because that's all I've been told. That's what was my narrative. But doing your due diligence in this role as an educator and providing quality educations to make sure that you inform yourself of all these opportunities, because we know education isn't one size fits all. We know that, you know, there are different pathways for you to go, and each one grants success and each one merits success. And as long as a kid understands that your talent, your skill set belongs somewhere, our job is just to make sure you find that pathway for you.
Thank you so much for sharing that experience. I think it really reminds us that the way we communicate educational tools can potentially foster exclusion rather than inclusion. And so I'd love to turn back to Jose, because when it comes to financial success, language plays a huge role in how students understand and access opportunities, whether through financial literacy, career readiness, or mentorship. So your research on Jesuit business schools and their role in socioeconomic development speaks directly to the UN's idea of quality education, or in this intersection of education and empowerment. So could you give a brief overview of your research collaboration between LMU and ULA in Spain, and explain how this global collaboration gives support to increase the number of students with skills for relevant financial success?
Yes, thank you for your question. So in the summer of 2023, I attended the 28th Annual International Association of Jesuit Business Schools World Forum. Your dean here at LMU for the College of Business Administration is the current president, and this was in Seville, Spain. We had originally applied for a grant for this research and development project and did not receive the grant. So Professor Anatoly Suplev and I turned the grant into a working paper and presented it at this conference. We collaborated with 2 other faculty from the University of Loyola, Andalusia, Maria Jose and Maria del Pino. Let me define regional socioeconomic development for you. Regional socioeconomic development means improving quality of life and economic opportunities in a specific area by addressing challenges like poverty, unemployment, and inequality, while ensuring growth is inclusive and sustainable. Our joint project between our university, Loyola Marymount, and Universidad Loyola Andalusia in Spain really brings to life the United Union's vision of quality education, particularly the goal of equipping students with skills for financial success and sustainable impact. What makes this initiative so powerful is that it's not just about theory, it's about application. One thing that I learned while at this conference is that students who attend Jesuit schools have 7 hungers, and one of them is a hunger for experiential learning. In this learning opportunity, students from both universities work towards to analyze some of the most pressing regional challenges in Southern California and also the area of Córdoba. Things like income inequality, unemployment, healthcare, and access. They then study best global practices and translate these insights into concrete, actionable policy recommendations for their local communities. This gives them not only research and critical thinking skills, but also experience in public policy, communication, and cross-cultural collaboration, all of which are currently tied to career readiness and financial independence. What grounds this work is the Jesuit commitment to ethical leadership and community engagement. We're not just training students to succeed economically, we're helping them see how they can be a force for good in their regions and beyond. And because this project is part of a large Jesuit network, there's real potential to expand this framework across Latin America, the US, and also Europe, creating a truly global learning ecosystem rooted in equity and innovation. In short, it's about building both skills and conscience, and that's at the heart of what equity education should be.
Thank you. Yeah, I think those insights definitely highlight how the power of a global partnership emphasizes what developing quality education looks like in practice. Because this is where LMU students get the chance to see education in a whole new light, not just as something that happens in classrooms, but something real and active in the community. So, in terms of student perspectives, I would like to bring LMU Extension back into the conversation. So my next question is for you, Carla. How does LMU Extension challenge conventional assumptions about who education is for? So for example, what does it mean to offer workshops to foster youth or even someone just released from prison? And how can this challenge help LMU students expand their own definitions of what it means to support learners?
It starts with getting our non-traditional students to really feel that there's power in their story, right? Whether they are just getting out of prison or going through their own recovery journey, there's power to that. And also that lived experience, in the case of our students, in the case of many students also, is an asset, a career asset, right? And I'll share an example with one of our signature programs is our substance use disorders counseling program. We've received substantial grant funding to allow formerly incarcerated individuals who may have been through their own recovery journey to now train to become substance use disorders counselors. So that is a prime example of we are turning their lived experience into a career asset, and they go on to be substance use disorders counselors for recovery homes, many of the programs, and now directly connected to the opioid crisis we are facing, not just locally, but on a national scale. And so again, the concept of empowering our students because of their lived experience and not thinking of it as in terms of a deficit, right? And that's really at the core of what we do at LMU Extension.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in addition to inclusivity and empowerment and focus on lived experience, the perspective really pushes all of us, especially students, to think more deeply about who we consider learners and what it truly means to support lifelong learning. So, building on that idea, Jose, I'd love to turn back to you. This panel is focused on how the LMU community is advancing quality education and translating the goal of lifelong learning into tangible success. So from your perspective, what distinguishes LMU's approach to business in terms of developing practical skills like financial literacy or formulating policy recommendations that are essential to sustainable socioeconomic success?
From my perspective as the business librarian at LMU, what truly distinguishes the university's approach is how deeply we embedded values-driven practical learning into every layer of the student's experience. At the College of Business Administration, students don't just learn about financial literacy or policy from a textbook. They apply those concepts to real-world issues that matter. A great example of this is B Corps 1910, Business for Good, a course I support closely. Students in this class develop business plans that tackle global challenges like poverty and gender inequalities and climate change. By the end of the semester, they're not just proposing ideas, they're presenting strategic, actionable recommendations grounded in sustainability, ethics, and financial planning. If you get an opportunity on Thursday, they will be presenting their poster presentations at 3:45 in the St. Rob's lawn. So go out and check it out. I enjoy this very much, watching these students present their presentations. Come and support, come be a judge. But in my role, I get to visit many undergraduate and graduate courses, classrooms, and help students access and analyze credible information from scholarly databases to government reports. They learn how to ask better questions, gather relevant data, and back up their ideas with evidence. That's not just research, it's lifelong skills that support informed decision-making and civic engagement far beyond college. LMU's Jesuit Foundation plays a huge role here. We prioritize cura personalis, care for the whole person, which means we're developing students not just as professionals, but as thoughtful, socially responsible leaders. Whether it's financial literacy, ethical entrepreneurship, or regional policy innovation, LMU helps students connect their personal values with the tools to make a real impact.
Thank you, Jose. Yeah, I think it's so important to understand the tradition of practical skill building into lifelong skills and broader goals. So as we conclude the panel, I want to turn to Antonio to highlight this focus on student experience and really emphasize the importance of perspective. So quality education emphasizes inclusive academia on a global scale. What lessons or blind spots should LMU students be aware of as they work toward equitable education systems beyond the LA community?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, going back to this idea of like education isn't a one size fits all. I think it's really important that we look at education through an intersectional lens, of course, right? Intersectionality, if you don't know, are multiple facets of our lived experience, right? There's gender, there's race, there's sexuality, there's all these ideas that create the lived experience that you have, and how we tie that in with education, of course, based on whatever pieces of identity formulate your lived experience, that's how you navigate education. Myself, as a first generation, eldest of 3 immigrant parents, shapes how I went about education, what value I put into education to get me here into this position. And with that being said, I think Los Angeles is just so vast that there's so many different types of stories out there. I mean, Southeast LA education is very different from West LA. And then putting into the context of a state level, California education is very different from Mississippi, from Oklahoma, from New York, from Florida. So to kind of comprehend all of that, you just kind of have to go out of your way. And again, going back to the humanization of our stories and kind of going back into adding context about why we go into this process and why we want to go ahead and get an education for ourselves. In one of our classes, I talk a lot about first generation students of color because that's what I'm familiar with and that's what I grew up with. And of course, how do you get a kid to show up when mom and dad are both at work and they need to go and provide for their little siblings? That is a lived experience, and as a counselor, I have to go out of my way to equip myself with the resources to help that family. However, on the flip side, I have a classmate who goes, yeah, I'm over here by San Marino, Pasadena area. I have a student coming into my office and saying, I don't need to go to school, I'm gonna inherit daddy's business and that's it. But that's a whole different set of challenges, and that's a whole different viewpoint, and that's a whole different set of things that you kind of have to look into, but both are equal challenges that you kind of have to look at it. So that's where intersectionality comes into play. I'm over here sitting down with this kid and talking about, okay kid, we'll point you to family youth source centers, we'll point you to make sure that you have food stamps and extra income. But for this kid, we're going over here having socio-emotional conversations. Is inheriting the business what you want to do for you? Is that what you not want to do? How can we equip you with that pathway to make sure that this is what you really truly want to do, and so you feel happy and fulfilled with life? And those are the stories and those are the narratives that we have to go ahead and tackle. So I think I'm very grateful with the LMU experience, because obviously it does open up my eyes and kind of equip myself with the different stories, because even though I may not be an expert in that field, chances are I will come across that kid, and how can I equip myself to make sure I can be as beneficial for this kid as to that kid. So with that being said, I invite you all to kind of think about intersectionality and think about who you're sitting next to and who your peers are and what their stories are, and giving grace to their stories. And I feel like truly that's where the community network and that's where the community wealth comes into play. And I think LMU is so exemplary with that diversity thing, because we really hear comprehend each other's stories in a way where we can then go back into our community and become those professionals and be agents of change.
Thank you. What a great closing statement. I think that's such an important reminder that the work of advancing education requires both reflection and action, especially when we're thinking globally, and creating truly equitable education systems is a learning process for everyone. So thank you to our panelists for sharing such thoughtful perspectives. So as we wrap up this discussion, I hope it sparks more questions and ongoing dialogue about what it means to support learning in all of its forms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're getting really close to dessert, but just two things before we move in that direction. I would like to introduce Dr. Jennifer Ramos, the Director of Global Learning. And she's going to introduce Abby and Isabella, who are going to make a brief presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Okay. I'm so glad to be here, and I just want to thank Professor Thies for this opportunity. We've been, our office, I'm a part of the International Programs and Partnerships Office out of the Provost Suite, and there we do global learning and advancement of internationalization on campus. And Professor Thies has been a huge advocate for us and has been a partner as well with the SDG Ambassadors. So I just want to give kudos to him because he's just amazing, anyone who knows him. So anyway, kudos to him. But also to our students. We have amazing students, and I'm so thrilled to see you here today. And I want to introduce some more new students that you may not be familiar with, but I have another hat as well on campus. I am additionally a faculty in political science and international relations, but my other hat, I'm interim director of the fellowships office, where we try to support students in amazing opportunities, both nationally and internationally. So we try to get students money to do what they want to do and help advance their careers and their whole personness. So I have two great assistants, and if they'll come up here, they're going to share a little bit about, just a short little presentation about fellowships that relate to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, since that seems very appropriate for today. They have been working with me for the last semester, really, but I feel like it's been longer. There's, you know, when you just have a good team and it clicks, like this is the team. So let me introduce, we have Abby Alexander, who is a double major in English and in journalism. So perfect for reviewing your essays. And we have Isabella Gutierrez, who is a political science major. And they're both phenomenal researchers. You can meet with them one-on-one. They'll tell you more about it. But I'll turn the stage over to them. And again, thank you so much for being here and supporting our students in this way and your peers. So, here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. It's nice to see you all today. Little interlude in the meantime. Thank you for joining. How many of you are familiar with fellowships already? Can we get a show of hands? Okay, a few. Well, I'm hoping that you'll be more well-versed after this presentation, and then, let's see who that Now, Dr. Ramos just gave us a lovely introduction, so from there, we'll just start off by giving you a little bit of overview about our office and the mission here, which is to empower students through connecting you with international and national opportunities, such as fellowships. So similar just to what Dr. Ramos said, this is like free money, but in addition to that, you can also get tailored fellowship and professional development opportunities. So through fellowships, there is specialized programming that comes with that, catered to your career and career goals and passions outside of that. So we're here to help you along the way. And we really personalize the experience of working with our office by really curating everything to your interests and your needs. And so you'll start for, there we go. So we will start with, you will fill out an intake form on our website, which will give us a brief overview of your academic path, your career goals, whether or not you're hoping to go abroad, all of your interests, even little slight hobbies that you may want to explore more that may not be as connected to your career path or your academics, that we just want to get to know you as a person briefly in this Google form. Then after that, we will set up an appointment with you to meet with you and just really hone in on what you want to do with your fellowship, what fellowships you're interested in, and if you've researched some already, fantastic. You don't have to going into this initial meeting. We are there to help you along that as well, because we will then create a curated fellowship list for you that will list what you're eligible for based on your interests. We also color code them so you know really like what each one will do, what will help, the due dates, the links, everything. We will give you all of that to keep you organized and on the right path. And then once you really have the fellowships that you're eligible for and you choose the ones that you're interested in, we do offer application and writing support for the essays, for if they have any personal statements, etc., that we are there to help you create those and make sure that because we have seen you as a whole person, we want to make sure that that is reflected in your application. So we can help with that stuff as well. And then with ongoing engagement, once you've even submitted your application, we'd love to hear back from you if you have gotten it, even if you haven't and want to try again or try for another fellowship, that we are here continuously, even after you graduate, if you want to come back as an alumni or as a graduate student to continue that fellowship work. One of our most popular fellowships is the Fulbright Fellowship. Has anyone here heard of Fulbright? Okay, a few of you, perfect. These are three of our previous Fulbright winners who have recently graduated, but that application also just opened and is due October 7th, so you have plenty of time if you are interested and want to come talk to us about Fulbright as well. Now, there are many myths and misconceptions with fellowships, like you can only reply and receive them in a few months, you need to be a 4.0, or applying is a waste of time because most of the time you don't win. These aren't always true. You can apply with, sometimes there are GPA requirements, most of the time there aren't. You can hear back from a fellowship whenever. Applying is never a waste of time, because even if you don't win, it gives you application experience, interview experience, writing experience, and a lot of experience that can help you with your career path and your academic goals as well. These are some of the postgraduate and undergraduate fellowships that align with SDG goals that we're talking about today. So for example, we have the AIF Banyan Impact Fellowship to India, which is a 10-month, most expenses are paid volunteer service program, where fellows work on a scalable and sustainable development project in the field of education, livelihoods, technology, innovation, or public health. So that is a great opportunity if you want to get some more volunteer experience. And another one we have, which is more environmental science STEM related, is the NOA Ernest F. Hollings Undergraduate Scholarship, which this one is more of a research internship type fellowship, where it is a 10-week full-time paid summer internship at an NOAA facility, and then they will give you a scholarship for 2 years of full-time study. So some of the internships will be more volunteer-based, some of them will be more internship-based. This one on the bottom, the Dr. James A. Ferguson Emerging Infectious Diseases Graduate Fellowship, is more research-centered, and the Udall Fellowship kind of encompasses a lot of scholarship, research, and active work within it. So with fellowships, there's such a wide range that you can really tailor it to yourself.
And feel free to meet us outside after, where we can give you more in-depth information and overview, where you can even find a link tree on our Instagram. We can tell you where that is too.
with a link to every month different themed fellowships. So lastly, I just want to quickly cover the Millennium Fellowship. This is right on the mark with SDG's goals, and part of this fellowship program would mean being an undergraduate student to be eligible, first of all, and you would apply. Lots of this includes, in the application process, personal statements and a project proposal that aligns with at least one of the SDG goals. And through that, we just have an example here of a fellow named Claire Sliney. And she mentions, my time as a Millennium Fellow played such an important role in getting me and my project at large to where we are today. And this is an Oscar-winning filmmaker. You can find her film on Netflix too. So also aligned with some of these goals. The deadline was extended for this fellowship until Sunday. So here's a brief overview, and this is a few semesters long. So it's about 2 semesters long to be part of this, and we need at least 8 applicants for our campus to even be eligible, as this program would be hosted on campus. You have mentorship from faculty, and all facilitated through the United Nations Academic Impact, and then Millennium Campus Network. So that's very brief part of what that is. And then different aspects here, part of convening, challenging, and celebrating some of the efforts to organize and mobilize on campus. And lastly,
If you'd like to come visit us, if you're interested in fellowships or just want to learn more, we have office hours Mondays and Tuesdays from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And our office is in the Tan building right next to Iggy's. It's Levy Suite 1. And you can scan our QR code if you want to learn more, or email the email, or call the phone number on the top. So yes. Yes.
Can we please do that afterwards with dessert?
Our table is right outside. If you have any questions, it has everything set up on it so you can't miss it.
And you guys will be there too.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll be there too.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to honor the SDG student ambassadors. 2 brief stories. CBA participates in an organization called the Globally Responsible Leadership Initiative. And there's a maxim of that organization that simply says, think big, start small, act now. And that really is inspirational. This is not to suggest that these projects have not been big projects. They have been big projects. But they're inspired by thinking big and action. So we think about the panel discussion on use that you facilitated. That really was moving us from recognition to advocacy to impact. And Carla and Antonio and Jose, who had to leave, he just got back from Europe. He was falling asleep, and so jet lag. So in any event, so grateful for the inspiration that we received in each of them. Before I came here full time, I was a mission integration executive for St. Joseph Health, a ministry of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange. And I was working with different boards of directors, and I was at a board of directors meeting at one of our hospitals in the high desert, a large area of profound need. And when you're working with people on hospital boards, who's on a hospital board? Professionals who want their community to be vibrant and to give to the hospital system precisely so that their community can advance. Anyway, I was sitting there introducing myself, getting to know them, different board members, and 50% of them were LMU alum. 50%. No surprise. Women and men for others. That's what you've heard. And that's what you've seen modeled in our SDG student ambassador programs. So I'm going to ask Liana and Aiden and Suryi and Kevin and Agnes, please come up here so we can give you a round of applause for your wonderful inspiration and work. Come on, stand up here and get your